Most people think family drama ends at shouting matches. My family beat me over a $15 bottle of perfume, but when helicopter blades drowned out the ambulance sirens, this wasn't about scent anymore. It was about the billionaire grandmother I thought was dead, arriving with proof that my life was a lie. By the end, the girl they called worthless walked out with a trust fund, a security team, and total control over how her story ends. My name is Eliana Graham, and at 29 years old, I was hiding in a bathroom that smelled faintly of mildew and aggressive lemon cleaner, terrified of a woman who had never fought in a war. Outside the frosted window, the relentless Oregon rain battered the siding of the house, a rhythmic drumming that usually soothed me. Tonight, it just sounded like static. I leaned over the chipped porcelain sink, staring at my reflection in the medicine cabinet mirror. The glass was desilvered at the edges, creating a halo of decay around my face. I looked tired, not the physical exhaustion of a double shift or a ruck march, but a bone-deep weariness that made my skin look gray under the harsh fluorescent bulb. I reached into the pocket of my oversized cardigan, my fingers brushing against the cold glass of the tiny bottle I had hidden there. It was a cheap drugstore perfume, something I had bought on my lunch break 3 days ago. $15, I had paid cash, carefully saved from the change I squirreled away from grocery runs, so it would not appear on the bank statement Marla monitored like a hawk. My heart did a traitorous little flutter as I pulled it out. It was such a small thing, a cylinder of amber liquid that smelled of vanilla and fake sandalwood. But in this house, in this life that had shrunk down to the size of a twin mattress and a shared chore list, it felt like an act of insurrection. I uncapped it. The spray mechanism was stiff. I pressed down, releasing a fine mist onto my wrists and the hollow of my neck. For a second, just 1 second, the bathroom did not smell like bleach and damp towels. It smelled warm. It smelled like a woman who went to dinner parties, a woman who owned her own life. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, letting the scent wrap around me like a shield. The door handle turned. It did not rattle or jiggle. It turned with the violent, possessive snap of someone who did not believe in privacy. I scrambled to shove the bottle back into my pocket, but my hands were slick with lotion. The door swung open, banging against the wall, and Marla stood there. My stepmother was a small woman, but she occupied space like a gas leak, invisible and choking. She was wearing her pink plush robe, the one she wore when she wanted to play the martyr, but her eyes were sharp, darting around the cramped room. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. Her voice was not loud, not yet. It was a low hum, like a generator powering up. "You have been in here for 20 minutes. Eliana, electricity costs money. Water costs money." "I am just getting ready for bed." "Marla," I said, my voice automatic, stripped of inflection. It was the voice I used to survive. "I will be out in a minute." Then her nose twitched. I froze. I saw the moment the scent hit her. Her eyes narrowed, and her head tilted back, sniffing the air like a bloodhound catching a trail. "What is that?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, backing up until my hips hit the cold edge of the sink. "Do not lie to me." She stepped into the bathroom. The space was so small that we were instantly in each other's personal space. She grabbed my wrist, pulling it up to her nose before I could pull away. She inhaled, and her face twisted in a sneer of pure disgust. "Perfume?" She let go of my hand as if I were contagious. "You are wearing perfume? Inside the house? At night?" "It is just a sample," I lied, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Liar." She spotted the bottle on the edge of the sink where I had failed to hide it. Her hand shot out, snatching it up. She held it up to the light, reading the label, her lips moving silently. Then she looked at me, and the explosion happened. $15, she screeched. She did not need a price tag. Marla knew the price of every single item in the local drugstore. "You spent $15 on this trash?" "It was my own money," I said, the protest weak even to my own ears. "Your money?" Her voice went up an octave, cracking with manufactured rage. "There is no your money in this house. Eliana, we are drowning in bills. Your father is working himself into an early grave. I am scraping pennies to put food on the table, and you are out buying whore water so you can smell like a distinct lack of morals? It is just perfume, Marla. Stop it. Stop it? You tell me to stop it? She moved faster than I expected. In the mirror, I saw the motion a split second before I felt it. Her open palm connected with the side of my face with a cracking sound that seemed louder than the thunder outside. It was not a slap intended to discipline. It was a slap meant to humiliate. My head snapped to the side. I stumbled, my elbow hitting the bottle she had set back down on the porcelain. The glass shattered. It was a sharp, dissonant crash. Shards of cheap glass exploded into the sink basin. The amber liquid pooled instantly, mixing with the water droplets, and the smell became overpowering. Vanilla and sandalwood, now choking and thick, filling the tiny room. I put a hand to my mouth. When I pulled it away, there was a smear of bright red blood on my fingertips. My lip had split against my teeth. The scent of the perfume mixed with the metallic tang of the copper blood in my mouth. It was a nauseating combination. "Look what you made me do!" Marla screamed, pointing at the broken glass. "Look at this mess. You are clumsy, ungrateful, and wasteful." I stood there, breathing hard, the sting on my cheek radiating heat. I was 29. I had gone through basic training. I had hauled sandbags in floodwaters and stood guard in disaster zones. I knew how to assemble an M4 carbine in the dark, but in this bathroom, with this woman, I was 5 years old again, paralyzed by the sheer irrationality of her anger. "What is going on?" My father appeared in the doorway, Carl Graham. He was holding a can of cheap domestic beer. His shoulders slumped in that permanent posture of defeat he had adopted a decade ago. He looked at the broken glass, then at Marla's heaving chest, and finally, briefly, at the blood on my lip. "She is throwing money away, Carl." Marla spun on him, playing to her audience. "Buying perfume while we struggle, and then she gives me attitude when I ask her about it." Dad took a sip of his beer. He did not look at me. He looked at the floor tiles. "Eliana," he mumbled, his voice thick with fatigue and apathy. "Don't provoke her. You know how she gets with her blood pressure." "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice trembling. "She hit me." "Don't you dare accuse me!" Marla lunged forward again. I instinctively straightened my spine. It was muscle memory from the guard. Shoulders back, chin up, brace for impact. But this wasn't a drill sergeant. This was a woman who controlled every aspect of my existence. From the living room, I saw movement. My 2 teenage cousins, Marla's nieces who were staying with us for a few days, that had turned into 3 months, were peering around the doorframe. One of them, a girl with braces and a cruel streak, had her phone held up. The red recording dot was not visible, but the way she held it was unmistakable. They were filming. Watching Eliana get humiliated was better than whatever was on Netflix. Marla saw them too, and it only fueled her performance. She turned back to me, her face inches from mine. "You think you are special?" she hissed, spit flying onto my cheek. "Because you have that little job at Atlas Ridge? You think that makes you better than us?" "I work to pay the rent you charge me," I said quietly. She shoved me. It was a hard, 2-handed shove against my chest. I stumbled back, my shoulder blades hitting the tiled wall with a dull thud. "That money is mine!" she screamed, her voice echoing off the bathroom tiles. "Everything in this house is mine. The food you eat, the water you use to wash that ugly face, the roof over your head. You are nothing without us. You would be on the street if we didn't take pity on you." I stood rigid against the wall. The damp cold of the tiles seeped through my cardigan. I could have pushed her back. I was stronger than her. I could have walked past her. But the psychological cage she had built around me was stronger than any lock. She had spent years convincing everyone, including my father, that I was unstable, financially incompetent, and emotionally fragile. If I fought back, I just proved her point. "Clean it up," she spat, stepping back. And do not think for 1 second you are keeping your paycheck this week. That is the reimbursement for the stress you just caused this family. The silence that followed was heavy. Outside, the rain had picked up. Through the thin walls of the townhouse, I knew the neighbors could hear. The Grahams were at it again. I imagined them pausing their televisions, peering through their blinds at our illuminated bathroom window. Mrs. Higgins next door, the young couple across the street. They saw the silhouette of a woman screaming. They probably heard the glass break. But nobody knocked. Nobody ever knocked. In Port Harbor, you minded your own business, even if it meant listening to a slow-motion murder of a spirit. Marla turned and marched out, pushing past my father. "Carl, get in here. We need to talk about your daughter's attitude." Dad gave me one last look. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. "Fix this," his eyes said. "Stop making my life hard." He turned and followed her, the obedient soldier in her army. The cousins lowered the phone, snickering as they retreated to the couch. I was alone. I turned back to the sink. The smell was dizzying now. I picked up a piece of the shattered glass. It was sharp, jagged. I looked at the label. Still intact on a shard. "Velvet Night." "You will pay for every drop," Marla had hissed as she left. I looked at my reflection again. The blood on my lip had started to clot. The red mark on my cheek was darkening, blooming into a bruise that I would have to cover with concealer before I went to Atlas Ridge tomorrow. "If I stay here," I whispered to the empty room, the words barely audible over the rain, "this is going to kill me." It wasn't a dramatic thought. It was a cold, tactical assessment. The National Guard had taught me to assess threats. This wasn't a threat of immediate death. It was a war of attrition. They were grinding me down, dollar by dollar, insult by insult, until there would be nothing left of Eliana Graham but a shell that signed over paychecks and apologized for existing. I carefully gathered the glass shards, wrapping them in a wad of toilet paper so they wouldn't cut through the trash bag. I wiped the blood from the sink. I scrubbed the amber oil until the porcelain squeaked, though the smell had seeped into the grout. I needed air. The bathroom felt like a coffin. I opened the back door off the kitchen, stepping out onto the small, rotting wooden porch that overlooked the muddy scrap of yard. The cold rain hit my face instantly, stinging the fresh bruise, but I welcomed it. It felt real. It felt clean. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. The darkness out towards the ocean was absolute, a black void where the sky met the Pacific. Then I heard it. It was faint at first, a rhythmic thumping sound layered beneath the noise of the wind and rain. Thwack, thwack, thwack. A helicopter. It was far out, maybe patrolling the coastline or heading up towards Seattle. It was just a sound, a distant vibration in the night air, but I tracked it with my ears, my head tilting slightly, in the guard. That sound meant extraction. It meant support. It meant you were not alone. Here, it just meant someone else was going somewhere. I looked up into the weeping gray sky, unable to see the machine but feeling its presence. "I wish I could fly out of here," I murmured. The words dissolved into the rain, carried away by the wind. I had no idea that the sound wasn't leaving. I had no idea that miles away, a flight plan had been filed, and that the thumping of those rotors was the first note of a song that would end with this entire house burning to the ground, metaphorically, and maybe, if Marla kept pushing, literally. I turned back to the door, my hand trembling on the knob. I had to go back in. I had to apologize. I had to survive the night. But as I stepped back into the warmth that felt like a prison, the smell of the spilled perfume clung to my skin, a reminder of the $15 that had just cost me my soul. To understand how a grown woman with combat training ends up cowering in a bathroom over a bottle of scent, you have to understand the architecture of the cage. It was not built overnight. If they build the walls all at once, you notice, you fight back, you run. But if they lay one brick a day, quietly, while you are looking the other way, or while you are sleeping, you eventually wake up to find that the sky has disappeared and the door has been bricked over. I was raised on a foundation of two absolute truths. or at least what I thought were truths. The first was that my mother had walked out on us when I was 5 years old because she simply did not want to be a mother anymore. The second was that her side of the family, the Kingsleys, were all dead, destitute, or indifferent, leaving us with nothing but bad genes and worse luck. My father, Carl, was the high priest of this narrative. He was a man who wore his victimhood like a comfortable old coat. He worked hard, I will give him that, but he bounced from job to job. Mechanic, warehouse shift lead, delivery driver, always losing them due to office politics or bad management. He would come home, crack open a beer, and look at me with eyes that were always a little too wet, telling me that we were cursed. He said the Graham family just could not catch a break, and that my mother's family had been nothing but tragedy that she ran away from. So I grew up feeling like a burden, an apology that had not been accepted yet. I tried to be small. I tried to be cheap. I learned that asking for things caused pain, so I stopped asking. Then, when I was 19, Marla arrived. I was just finishing high school, working part-time at a diner to save for community college. Marla was a customer who lingered too long over coffee, chatting up my dad. She was a beauty school dropout with hair that was always a little too stiff with spray and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Within 3 months, she had moved in. Within 6 months, they were married. At first, I thought she was saving us. She cleaned the house. She cooked actual meals instead of the frozen dinners Dad and I survived on. But looking back, I see the precision of her takeover. It was military in its efficiency. "Carl, honey, you are working yourself to the bone," she would coo, massaging his shoulders while he looked over the stack of overdue bills. "Let me handle the paperwork. You just focus on earning. I will stretch the dollars." And Dad, desperate to be taken care of, handed her the checkbook like it was a surrender flag. That was the beginning. Marla instituted systems. We had envelopes for everything. We had strict limits on electricity. She scrutinized every receipt. If I bought a pack of gum, she wanted to know why I had not chewed the piece I had yesterday. She framed it as helping us get ahead, but we never got ahead. We just got tighter. I joined the National Guard not out of patriotism, but out of a desperate need for a door. I needed money for school that did not come with a lecture about sacrifice. I needed a bed that Marla did not inspect every morning. When I left for basic training, I felt like I could finally breathe. The drill sergeants were loud. Sure, but their rules made sense. You do the work, you get the result. If you mess up, you do push-ups, and then it is over. It was honest. But Marla's voice followed me. "Your father is struggling with his back again," she would say on our Sunday calls. "The medical bills are piling up. I don't know how we are going to pay the heating bill this winter." The guilt was a hook in my gut. I was away, getting 3 meals a day and a paycheck, while my dad was suffering, or so I was told. So, I started sending money home, just a little at first, then more. To help out, I told myself, just until Dad gets back on his feet. Whenever I came home on leave, the cage walls had moved in a little closer. It started with my stuff. I would come back to my childhood bedroom to find it slightly different. My high school yearbooks were gone. "Oh, they were getting moldy in the closet," Marla said. "I tossed them to protect your health." Next, it was my clothes. "You don't wear that style anymore. Eliana, I donated them to the church drive. It is charity." The worst blow came when I was 24. I came home for Christmas and went to look for the small tin box where I kept the few photos I had of my mother. Blurry Polaroids, mostly. One of her holding me at a park. One of her laughing at a birthday cake. They were my only proof that I came from somewhere. The box was gone. When I asked Marla, she didn't even look up from the television. "Those old things? I sold the tin at a yard sale last summer. We needed space for your cousin's sleeping bags." "But the photos," I had choked out, panic rising in my throat. "What about the photos inside?" "I threw them out," she said casually. "Eliana, really? Why are you obsessing over a woman who abandoned you? It is disrespectful to me. After all I have done for you, it is morbid. You need to move on." I screamed at her. It was the only time I truly lost control. I yelled until my throat was raw. And that was when she played her ace card. She turned to my father, who was cowering in his armchair, and said, calmly, "See, Carl? I told you, the service has messed up her head. She is unstable. She is having an episode over some trash." Dad looked at me, red-faced, shaking, crying over lost memories, and he believed her. He saw a daughter who was emotional and damaged, just like Marla had been whispering in his ear for years. From that day on, the narrative shifted. I wasn't just the ungrateful daughter. I was the unstable daughter. Marla told the aunts, the neighbors, the church group. "Eliana struggles with her emotions," she would say with a heavy sigh. "We have to be very patient with her. She is not good with reality or money." The final trap snapped shut 2 years ago. I had been deployed to help with the wildfires in California. It was weeks of grueling, back-breaking work, digging fire lines, hauling gear up smoke-choked ridges, sleeping 4 hours a night on hard ground. I saw things burn that shouldn't burn. I breathed air that tasted like ash and loss. When I was discharged, I was physically shattered and mentally drained. I just wanted to sleep for a week. I had lined up a job at Atlas Ridge Systems as a data analyst, a quiet, boring job that I desperately needed. But I didn't have an apartment yet. "Come home," Marla had insisted over the phone. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Just for a month or two, until you find a place. You are exhausted. Ellie, let us take care of you. You can save up a deposit." I was too tired to fight. I wanted to believe that home could be a sanctuary, so I agreed. The first night I was back, Marla put a document in front of me at the dinner table. "Since you are living here rent-free to save money," she said, sliding a pen toward me, "it makes sense for us to pool resources. This just authorizes a direct deposit to the household account. I will manage it. Pay your share of the bills, and put the rest in a savings sub-account for you. You won't even have to think about it. You know how bad you are with numbers when you are stressed." I am a data analyst. I am excellent with numbers. But sitting there, under the yellow kitchen light, with my dad looking at me with that pathetic hopefulness, I felt like a child again. I felt like the unstable girl who lost her temper over old photos. I wanted to prove I could be a good daughter. I wanted to prove I trusted them. I signed. Just for a few months, I told myself. 2 years later, I was still there. The savings account Marla promised? It never seemed to grow. Every time I asked about it, there was an emergency. The roof leaked. The water heater exploded. Dad needed dental work. Marla's car needed a transmission. My paycheck vanished into the black hole of the Graham household expenses, and I was given an allowance of $40 a week for gas and lunch. If I complained, Marla would pull out a spreadsheet. She would show me inflated costs for groceries, utilities, insurance. "You have no idea how much it costs to keep you. Eliana," she would scold. "You are eating us out of house and home, and you complain about where your money goes? Ungrateful." I became a ghost in my own life. I went to work at Atlas Ridge, where I was competent and respected, and then I came home to Port Harbor, where I was a parasitic child. I started to rebel in invisible ways. It was the only way to keep my sanity. I bought a small, leather-bound notebook and hid it under my mattress, writing down my thoughts just to prove they were real. That was $5. I bought a pair of fake pearl earrings and wore them only at work, taking them off before I pulled into the driveway. That was $8. And then, 3 days ago, I bought the perfume, Velvet Night. I didn't even particularly love the smell. It was a bit too heavy, a bit too sweet. But I bought it because I handed the cashier a $20 bill that I had saved by skipping lunch for 2 weeks, and I got $5 back in change that I put in my pocket. It was a transaction that Marla did not know about. It was a secret. In this house, a secret was the only luxury I could afford. But there was another secret, one I hadn't figured out how to unlock yet. Over the last 6 months, I had noticed something strange with the mail. Marla always got to the mailbox first. She was obsessive about it, but a few times, On Saturdays, when she was distracted, I had seen envelopes that looked different. They were made of thick cream-colored paper, expensive paper. The return address was always a printed logo, something discreet, and the addressee was odd. Ms. E. Kingsley. Not Eliana Graham, E. Kingsley. The first time I saw one, I asked Marla about it. She had snatched the envelope from my hand so fast she nearly gave me a paper cut. Junk mail, she had snapped, shoving it into the trash compactor immediately. Solicitors. They buy old mailing lists, probably looking for your dead relatives to scam us. But it says Kingsley, I had said. That is Mom's name. Exactly, Marla said, turning on the compactor. The crunching sound of the machine was final. Dead people, scammers, forget it. But I couldn't forget it. The Kingsley name haunted me. It was the name of the bad blood, the source of our curse. Why was someone sending expensive letters to a curse? I was too tired to fight her for the mail. I was too tired to argue about the bank account. I was just tired. Until tonight. Until the moment Marla's hand connected with my face. When that bottle shattered in the sink, something shattered in my chest too. But it wasn't my spirit. It was the illusion. As I stood on the back porch in the rain, listening to the helicopter fade into the distance, the pieces finally clicked together. Marla didn't hate me because I was a burden. If I was truly a financial drain, she would have kicked me out years ago. She loved money more than she hated me. No, she kept me here. She forced me to live in this box. She isolated me from my friends, stole my history, and controlled my communication. You don't lock up something that is worthless. You only lock up something that has value. The slap wasn't about a $15 bottle of perfume. It was about the fact that I had dared to spend a single dime without her permission. It was fear. Marla was terrified of my independence. Why? The question hung in the damp air. Why was a beauty school dropout so terrified of a data analyst leaving her house? I touched the bruising skin of my cheek. It throbbed in time with my heartbeat. E. Kingsley. The letters weren't junk mail. You don't send junk mail on linen paper. I realized then that I wasn't just stuck. I wasn't just saving money. I was a prisoner. And prisoners don't get released for good behavior. Prisoners have to break out. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Not from cold, but from a sudden, icy rage. I had spent my life thinking I was fighting a war against bad luck. But I wasn't fighting luck. I was fighting a warden. I went back inside, the smell of rain and ozone clinging to my hair. I walked past the living room where my father sat staring blankly at the TV, past the kitchen where Marla was aggressively scrubbing a pot, and into the tiny bedroom that used to be mine, but now felt like a holding cell. I didn't go to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just cover the bruise, I would use it. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just go to work, I would go to war. And the first battleground would be finding out who on earth E. Kingsley was, and why Marla Graham was so desperate to keep her dead. The next morning, the bathroom mirror became a tactical station. I was not just getting ready for work, I was constructing a disguise. The bruise on my cheek had bloomed overnight, transforming from a tender red welt into a violacious smudge that looked like a thunderhead trapped under my skin. I dabbed green color-correcting concealer onto the spot, hissing softly at the tenderness. Green cancels out red. Peach cancels out blue. I applied layer after layer, blending the edges with a sponge until my face looked uniform, flat, and utterly fake. Marla was waiting for me in the kitchen. She was drinking coffee from a mug that said, "World's Best Mom," a piece of ceramic irony that made my stomach turn. She did not look at me. She looked at the air beside me. "If anyone asks," she said, her voice breezy and light, "you tripped over the open cabinet door while you were looking for a midnight snack. You know how clumsy you are when you get those sugar cravings." I stopped mid-step. It was not just a lie. It was a lie designed to reinforce the narrative that I was impulsive and lacked self-control. I was not looking for a snack, Marla. I was cleaning up the blood from my lip. "Cabinet door," she repeated, taking a sip of coffee. Don't make it a big deal. Eliana, nobody likes a drama queen. And fix your collar. You look disheveled. I walked out the door without saying goodbye to my father. I could hear him in the living room, the television already blaring the morning news, drowning out the reality of his own house. The drive to Atlas Ridge Systems was usually my decompression time, but today my hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The silence in the car felt heavy. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Marla in the back seat, critiquing my driving. When I swiped my badge and entered the cool, climate-controlled lobby of the office, I felt a physical wave of relief. Here, I was not the clumsy stepdaughter. I was a senior data analyst. I spoke in SQL and Python. I made chaos into order. But the chaos followed me. Hey, Eliana, do you have the Q3 projections? I turned too quickly. Liam Ortiz was standing right behind my cubicle wall. He was a good guy, soft-spoken, with the kind of emotional intelligence that usually made me feel safe. Today, it made me terrified. I flinched. It was a small, sharp movement, my shoulder jerking up toward my ear as if to block a blow. Liam paused. He was holding a stack of files, but his eyes dropped immediately to my face. I had done a good job with the makeup, but fluorescent office lighting is unforgiving. He saw the texture of the heavy concealer. He saw the slight swelling, and he definitely saw the fear in my eyes. "Whoa," he said, lowering his voice. "Are you okay?" "I am fine," I said, turning back to my monitors. I tripped, last night, in the kitchen, hit my face on a cabinet door." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Liam stood there for a long moment. He did not buy it. I could feel his skepticism radiating off him. "A cabinet door," he repeated slowly. "I was looking for a snack," I added, regurgitating Marla's script. "Clumsy." "Right," Liam said. He did not push. He placed the files on my desk, but he did not leave immediately. He tapped his finger on the edge of my desk. "You know, if you ever need a place to crash, or just talk, my sister has a guest room. She's cool. Just putting that out there." "I am fine, Liam, really." He walked away, but the look on his face, pity mixed with concern, burned the back of my neck. I tried to work. I pulled up the spreadsheets, the endless rows of sales data and customer demographics, but the numbers swam before my eyes. The logical part of my brain, the part that solved puzzles for a living, was rejecting the task. It had a more urgent puzzle to solve. I minimized the spreadsheet. I opened a private browser window. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Signs of financial abuse in families." The results populated instantly. "Controlling access to money, check. Sabotaging employment or career advancement. Marla complaining about my hours, making me late, check. Theft of property or inheritance. The photos, my clothes, check. Gaslighting about spending habits." I read an article about the narrative of the unstable victim. It described exactly what Marla did, painting the victim as crazy or irresponsible, to preemptively discredit them if they ever spoke out. I felt cold. I was sitting in a 70-degree office, wearing a wool cardigan, and I was freezing. It was not just a bad relationship, it was a textbook case. I was a statistic. At lunch, I did not go to the break room. I stayed at my desk, eating a granola bar I had found in my drawer. I made the mistake of opening social media. There, at the top of my feed, was a post from Marla Graham, posted 1 hour ago, asking for prayers today. It is so hard when you sacrifice everything for a child, giving them a roof over their head and love in your heart, only to be treated with such disrespect. Some people would rather spend money on expensive perfume to impress strangers than help their own struggling parents pay the water bill. Lord, give me the strength to deal with ungrateful hearts and the me-first generation. Family first prayers for patients ungrateful. She had tagged my father. She had tagged 3 of my aunts. She had tagged the pastor's wife. I stared at the screen, the granola bar turning to dust in my mouth. She had taken the truth, that I bought a $15 bottle of perfume with my own lunch money, and twisted it into a public indictment of my character. I clicked on the comments. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop myself. Aunt Janice. Oh, Marla, you are a saint to put up with that. We all know how difficult she has been since she came back from the service. Stay strong. Mrs. Gable, church choir. I will pray for her. Marla, it sounds like the devil has a hold on her priorities. Have you considered that maybe the drinking is coming back? I heard she was unstable. Cousin Becky, imagine being 30 and still acting like a brat. Love you, Aunt Marla. Drinking? I didn't drink. I had a glass of wine maybe twice a year. But somewhere, somehow, Marla had planted that seed. She had told them I had a drinking problem. That was why my hands shook. That was why I was moody. My phone buzzed. It was the family group chat. Marla. Carl, we need to talk about fixing the bathroom wall where Eliana slammed into it last night. I am afraid there is structural damage. Marla. I am just scared. Carl, the way she screamed at me, the way she broke that bottle, I don't feel safe in my own home. I typed a response. My thumbs flew across the screen. I did not scream. You hit me. You threw me against the wall. Then I deleted it. If I sent that, I looked defensive. I looked like the crazy person she was describing. Lashing out. Then a message from my father popped up. Carl, let's just all calm down. Please. Eliana, just apologize to Marla tonight so we can have peace. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I dropped the phone on my desk. It made a loud clatter. Peace. He wanted peace. He was willing to let his wife rewrite reality, willing to let her paint his daughter as a violent, alcoholic failure, just so he didn't have to listen to Marla yell. Rough day? Liam was back. He was leaning against the partition, holding 2 coffees. He set one down on my desk. Cafeteria coffee. It is terrible, but it is hot. Thanks, I mumbled. I quickly closed the browser tab with the abuse checklist, but I didn't close the Facebook tab fast enough. Liam's eyes flicked to the screen. He saw Marla's post. He saw the wall of text. He didn't say anything about it, which was a kindness I didn't know how to handle. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee and looked out the window at the gray Oregon sky. My aunt works in finance, he said, seemingly out of nowhere. Wealth management, high net worth individuals, you know, the type of people who buy islands. Okay, I said, confused by the pivot. She tells me these stories, Liam continued, about how money makes families weird, people fighting over trust funds, suing each other over beach houses. It is ugly, he looked at me. But you know what she says? She says the only thing worse than fighting over money is fighting over the lack of it. He gestured vaguely at my computer screen. You seem stuck. Eliana, I don't know your situation, but if your grandma was some rich billionaire, you wouldn't be taking this crap, right? You would be on a yacht somewhere. He laughed, a self-deprecating sound. Sorry, bad joke. Nobody should have to come to work looking like they went 5 rounds with a cabinet door. He walked away before I could respond. But his words hung in the air. If your grandma was some rich billionaire. My heart did a strange, stuttering rhythm. Kingsley. Kingsley. The name Marla spat out like a curse, the name of the dead broke family. I finished the workday on autopilot. Every keystroke felt heavy. When 5 o'clock hit, I didn't want to go home. I considered sleeping in my car. But if I didn't come home, Marla would call the police. She would frame it as a wellness check for her missing, unstable daughter. She would escalate. I drove home. The house was quiet when I entered. Marla was not in the kitchen. I went straight to my room, tossed my bag on the bed, and pulled out my laptop. I needed to check my bank account. I needed to see if I had enough for a motel room, just for one night. I logged into the credit union portal. I typed in my username. I typed in the password I had used for 2 years. Access denied. Incorrect password. I typed it again, carefully. Access denied. I clicked Forgot Password. A reset link has been sent to the email on file. M. Graham Ah. She had changed the recovery email. I felt the panic rising, a cold water rising up my throat. I grabbed my phone and opened the banking app. User locked. Marla! I ran out into the hallway. My father was coming out of the bedroom, looking tired. Where is she? I demanded. She locked me out. I cannot access the joint account. I cannot access my sub-account. Lower your voice, Dad hissed, glancing at the closed door of their bedroom. She is resting. She has a migraine from all the stress. Dad, she stole my password. She locked me out of my own money. She didn't steal anything, Carl said, rubbing the back of his neck. The bank flagged some suspicious activity. Marla told me something about spending at liquor stores and frivolous shops. She said they froze it for your protection. Liquor stores? Dad, I bought a sandwich and gas. That is it. You can see the statements. She showed me the alert. Eliana, he said, avoiding my eyes. She handles the finances. She is better at math than we are. She said you were spiraling. She is just trying to stop you from overdrafting. I am a data analyst, I shouted, my voice cracking. I do math for a living. Marla dropped out of beauty school. How can you believe her over me? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it. He didn't believe her, not really. I saw the doubt in his eyes. I saw the shame. He knew, deep down, that Marla was lying. He knew his daughter wasn't a drunk. He knew I wasn't crazy. But admitting that meant admitting that he had married a monster. Admitting that meant he had to leave his comfortable chair and his beer and fight for me, and he was too weak to do it. Just let her handle it, he muttered, turning away. Don't make a scene. We will talk about an allowance on Monday. He walked into the living room and turned up the volume on the TV. I stood there in the hallway, vibrating with rage. It wasn't the hot, fiery rage of the night before. It was cold. It was absolute. I went back to my room and locked the door. It was a flimsy lock. Marla could pick it with a hairpin, but it was a symbol. I need it out. I need it out now. I went to the closet. I didn't have a suitcase. Marla had borrowed it for a cousin and lost it, but I had a backpack. I started shoving clothes into it. Socks, underwear, a spare uniform shirt from my guard days that I had hidden. I reached up to the top shelf, feeling around for my old sneakers. My hand brushed against a cardboard box. It was an old shoebox, taped shut. I had forgotten about it. It was filled with junk from my childhood that Marla hadn't deemed worth selling. Old report cards, a dried corsage from prom. I pulled it down. The tape was brittle and yellow. I ripped it open. Inside, under a stack of spelling tests, was a thick, cream-colored envelope. I froze. I remembered this. I was 10 years old. It had arrived in the mail the day after my mom's funeral. Dad had been too drunk to check the mail, so I had brought it in. I had liked the feel of the paper. It felt like money. I had hidden it in my treasure box because I liked the stamp. I had never opened it. I had forgotten it existed until this very second. I picked it up. The paper was heavy, textured linen. It had yellowed with age, but the ink was still dark blue, crisp and elegant. To Eliana Kingsley, Graham, CEO Carl Graham, 142, Cedar Lane, Port Harbor. Or, my breath caught in my throat. Eliana Kingsley Graham. I turned it over. The return address was embossed on the back flap. Kingsley Holdings Family Office, 808, Madison Avenue, Manhattan, NY. Kingsley Holdings. My brain short-circuited. Kingsley, Kingsley. The junk mail Marla always shredded. The wealthy Aunt Liam mentioned. The bad blood. I didn't open it. Not yet. My hands were shaking too hard. I sat on the floor of my prison cell, holding the envelope like it was a live grenade. Marla had blocked the bank. She had blocked the truth. She had blocked my life. But she had missed this. I looked at the Manhattan address again. This wasn't a scam. Scammers didn't send linen letters to 10-year-olds and wait 19 years for a reply. This was the thread, and I was going to pull it until the whole damn sweater unraveled. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, the laptop screen casting a ghostly blue light against the peeling paint of the wall. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a physical echo of the name I had just typed into the search bar. Kingsley Holdings Family Office. I hit enter. I expected a small business page, maybe a local law firm in upstate New York, maybe a defunct website from the 90s. What loaded was a sleek, minimalist page in slate gray and navy blue. There were no stock photos of smiling families or handshakes, just a serif logo of a stylized K and a single line of text, Private Wealth Management and Philanthropic Ventures. I navigated to the About section. The first name listed under the board of directors was Eleanor Kingsley. I clicked her name. An image loaded. It was an old photo, black and white, of a woman standing on the steps of a brownstone, looking at the camera with an expression that could cut glass. She was small, elegant, and terrifying. She looked like someone who bought buildings just to evict people she did not like. She also looked, around the eyes, exactly like the mother I remembered from my blurry, stolen Polaroids. I scrolled down to read the bio. Eleanor Kingsley, matriarch and founder, real estate mogul, philanthropist, estimated net worth. The number made my breath hitch. It was in the billions. I sat back, my head thumping against the bed frame. Billions. My father had told me my mother's family were destitute drifters. He had told me they were bad news and cursed with poverty. He had told me we were lucky to have Marla because she knew how to stretch a dollar. I looked down at my hands. My fingernails were short and unpolished because I could not afford a manicure. My socks had a hole in the heel. I was hiding in a room where I paid rent to a woman who hit me, terrified over a $15 bottle of perfume, while my grandmother apparently owned half of Manhattan. The rage I felt was not hot like fire. It was cold, like liquid nitrogen. It clarified everything. I found the contact tab. There was no phone number, just a generic email form for general inquiries. I took a photo of the yellowed envelope with my phone. My hands were shaking, so it took 3 tries to get the text legible. Eliana Kingsley Graham. The proof that I existed to them. I attached the photo. In the message box, I typed, "My name is Eliana Graham. I found this envelope in my father's house. I was told my mother's family was dead. I am looking for any information regarding a relation to Laura Kingsley." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The next 2 days were a blur of paranoia. Every time Marla looked at me, I thought she knew. When she banged pots in the kitchen, I flinched, waiting for her to storm in and demand to know why I was on the internet. I kept my head down. I went to work. I came home. I locked my door. On Tuesday morning, I was at my desk at Atlas Ridge, staring at a data set on regional lumber sales, when my Outlook pinged. Sender, Jared Sloan, Kingsley Holdings. Subject, regarding your inquiry, confidential. My stomach dropped to the floor. I clicked it open. Ms. Graham? Thank you for your correspondence. We have been attempting to reach you through traditional channels for several months without success. The document you attached is verified as correspondence from our office. Due to the sensitive nature of your inquiry and certain irregularities in your file, I would like to speak with you via a secure line. Please provide a number and a time where you can speak freely and privately. Regards, Jared Sloan, Senior Associate. Irregularities. I looked around the office. Liam was 2 rows over, wearing headphones. The break room was empty, but I could not risk it. I booked one of the soundproof focus rooms, usually reserved for client calls. I told my manager I had a telehealth appointment. I went into the small glass-walled room and pulled the blinds. I sat down and typed a reply. I can talk now. I gave him my cell number. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. This is Eliana, I said, my voice sounding thinner than I wanted it to. Ms. Graham? The voice on the other end was deep, professional, and devoid of regional accent. This is Jared Sloan. I am recording this call for compliance purposes. Do you consent? Yes. Before we proceed, I need to verify your identity. Can you please state your date of birth and your mother's full maiden name? I gave him the dates. Laura Elizabeth Kingsley. There was the sound of typing on his end. Thank you, Ms. Graham. I admit we were surprised to receive your email. We were under the impression that you wished to have no direct contact with the office. No direct contact? I gripped the edge of the table. I didn't know you existed until 48 hours ago. My father told me my mother's family was dead. The silence on the line was heavy. It lasted for 5 full seconds. Dead, Jared repeated, the word flat. I see. Ms. Graham, Eleanor Kingsley is very much alive. She is 88 years old and currently residing in New York. She established the Laura Kingsley Trust 24 years ago, shortly after your mother passed away, specifically for your benefit. The room seemed to tilt. A trust? Yes, a trust designed to provide for your education and general welfare until your 30th birthday, at which point the full principal would vest. However, there have been monthly maintenance allocations distributed for the past 14 years. Allocations, I whispered. You mean money? Yes, Ms. Graham, money. Jared's voice shifted. It became less administrative and more alert. Substantial sums. We are talking about a monthly stipend indexed to inflation. Currently, it stands at approximately $5,800 per month. I nearly dropped the phone. $5,800 a month? I made $3,000 a month at Atlas Ridge, before taxes, and Marla took $2,000 of that for rent and expenses. I was eating granola bars for lunch because I could not afford a sandwich. I never received a cent, I said, my voice trembling. I have never seen a check. I have never seen a statement. That is concerning, Jared said, the typing on his end picking up speed. According to our records, the checks are mailed to an address in Port Harbor, 142 Cedar Lane. That is my house, I said. That is where I live. And they are cashed. Ms. Graham, every single month, we have digital copies of the endorsed checks. They are signed on the back. Signed by who? By you. Or rather, they are signed Eliana G. in a script that I am looking at right now. I don't sign like that, I said. I sign my full name. Who? Describe the handwriting. It is looped, Jared said. Large, somewhat shaky loops. The I is dotted with a small circle. I closed my eyes. I felt sick, physically violent sick. Marla. When Marla wanted to write something cute on a birthday card, she used that handwriting. It was her fake, girlish font. She had been signing my name on $5,000 checks for 14 years. Do the math. The data analyst in my brain screamed. 14 years. 168 months. Even averaging lower for the earlier years. That was hundreds of thousands of dollars. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. It wasn't me, I choked out. I never signed them. I didn't know. We assumed, Jared said, his tone hardening, that you had authorized a family member to handle the deposits. There is a document on file from 12 years ago, a change of administration form. It lists a guardian for the correspondence. A guardian? Mrs. Marla Graham. It claims you were incapacitated, emotionally unable to handle financial burdens due to grief. I was 17, I hissed. I wasn't incapacitated. I was in high school. I was working at a diner. And the document is notarized, Jared added, though looking at it now, the notary stamp looks... I never signed any power of attorney, I said. I joined the National Guard to pay for community college. Mr. Sloan, I scrubbed floors. I deployed to disaster zones because I needed the money. Do you think I would have done that if I knew I had a trust fund? No, Jared said softly. I do not. Why didn't my grandmother call me? Why didn't anyone check? Mrs. Kingsley writes to you, Jared said. 4 times a year, every birthday, every Christmas. She asks about your life. She asks why you never reply. The guardian, your stepmother, replies on your behalf. She sends short notes. She says you are grateful but private, and that you prefer not to engage with the painful past. Tears pricked my eyes, hot, angry tears. They weren't just stealing my money. They were stealing my voice. They were telling my grandmother that I didn't want her. That is a lie, I whispered. It is all a lie. Marla tells everyone I am unstable. She tells everyone I am bad with money. She throws away the letters. She calls them junk mail. Ms. Graham, Jared's voice was crisp now. He had switched into a different mode. I need you to listen to me very carefully. If what you are saying is true, we are not dealing with a misunderstanding. We are dealing with federal crimes, mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and since the trust originates in New York and the checks cross state lines to Oregon, this is under FBI jurisdiction. FBI. The word hung in the air of the small glass room. Our internal audit flagged the account 2 weeks ago, Jared explained. The signature on the last check looked significantly different from the signature on your original birth certificate documents we had on file. That is why I flagged it. That is why I asked for this call. What happens now? I asked. Now, I escalate this to our legal department, and I inform Mrs. Kingsley. She has been very distressed about the distance between you two. She will want to know the truth. She thinks I hate her, I said. She thinks you are distant, Jared corrected, but she never stopped sending the checks. She wanted you to be safe. Safe. The word triggered a flash of memory. The bathroom tiles, the smell of cheap vanilla, Marla's hand connecting with my face, the way she shoved me against the wall. You will pay for every drop. Ms. Graham? Jared asked, his voice dropping a register. I need to ask you a standard security question. Given the amount of money involved and the deception you are describing, do you feel safe in your current living situation? I looked at the glass wall of the focus room. Outside, people were walking by with laptops and coffees. Normal people. People who didn't have grandmothers with billions of dollars and stepmothers who committed federal felonies. My instinct was to lie. To say I was fine. To be the soldier who could handle it. Don't make a scene. My father's voice echoed in my head. But then I remembered the look in Marla's eyes when she broke the perfume bottle. It wasn't just anger, it was possession. She owned me. And if she found out I knew about the money, if she found out the golden goose was about to stop laying eggs and start talking to federal agents, she wouldn't just slap me. She would destroy me. She would burn the house down with me inside before she let go of that cash flow. Ms. Graham? Jared pressed. Are you safe physically? I took a breath. It shuddered in my chest. No, I said. The word was small, but it was the truest thing I had ever spoken. No, I am not. Understood, Jared said. Do not go home tonight if you can avoid it. But if you must, act normal. Do not let them know we have spoken. I am going to patch in Dana Holt, our chief legal counsel. Do not hang up. I sat there, gripping the phone, listening to the hold music. It was classical. Vivaldi, the Four Seasons, specifically, winter. I stared at the white whiteboard wall. I had walked into this room as a broke data analyst with a mean stepmother. I was sitting here now as the heiress to a fortune that had been funding my own abuse for 14 years. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just taking the hit. I was calling in the cavalry. The classical music on the hold line cut out abruptly, replaced by a click and a new voice. This one was different. If Jared Sloan sounded like an expensive suit, this woman sounded like a judge handing down a sentence. Eliana Graham? She asked. I am Dana Holt, General Counsel for Kingsley Holdings. Jared has briefed me on the situation. I am going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them with absolute precision. Do you understand? Yes, I said, my voice steadying. I liked her tone. It was the tone of someone who brought ammunition to a knife fight. Good. We are opening a formal inquiry into the misappropriation of the Laura Kingsley Trust. To do that, I need to build a timeline of deception. I need you to be my eyes on the ground until we can get you out of there. For the next 40 minutes, Dana Holt turned me from a victim into an operative. She told me exactly what she needed. Bank statements if I could find them, photos of the mail, screenshots of Marla's social media activity. These people are narcissists. Eliana, Dana said, her voice dry. They cannot help but brag. Even if they are vague, they will leave a trail, look for posts about sudden windfalls. blessings, or purchases that do not match their reported income. I went back to my desk at Atlas Ridge, but I did not work on lumber sales data. I worked on the dossier of my own exploitation. I minimized my browser window every time a shadow passed my cubicle. My hands were sweating, leaving damp marks on the mouse. I felt like a spy in a glass house. I logged into Facebook on a burner account I had made years ago to monitor my ex-boyfriend, and I navigated to Marla's profile. I scrolled back, way back. 3 years ago, so blessed that God always provides for our needs, just when the bills are due. New transmission paid for in cash. Miracle. That was the same week my allowance was cut because, according to Marla, the heating bill was too high. 5 years ago, Carl and I are finally taking that cruise. It is amazing how things work out when you manage your household with faith and discipline. That was the month I had sent home $2,000 from my deployment bonus because Dad said they were risking foreclosure. I took screenshots of everything, the dates, the times, the comments from envious neighbors. Then I went to the printer. The office printer was a massive, humming beast in the center of the hallway. I sent the print job, 60 pages of evidence. I stood by the tray, my body blocking the view, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Big project? I jumped. It was Liam again. He was walking to the water cooler, looking tired. Yeah, I managed, snatching the papers from the tray before he could see the Facebook screenshots or the Kingsley logo on the emails I had forwarded. I shoved them into a red folder labeled Project Notes. Just market research, boring stuff. You look pale, Eliana, Liam said, pausing. Seriously? Is everything okay at home? I am working on it, I said. It was the first honest thing I had said to him in 2 days. I am really working on it. I walked back to the focus room and dialed Dana back. I had scanned the documents into a secure folder she had set up. I got them, Dana said. I could hear papers rustling on her end. We are cross-referencing these dates with the trust disbursements. It is brazen. They timed their miracles perfectly with the arrival of the checks. How did they get away with it for so long? I asked, staring at the whiteboard. How did nobody notice? Because they had paperwork, Dana said. I am looking at a document right now. Eliana, it is titled Limited Power of Attorney for Financial Administration. It grants Marla Graham full authority to receive, endorse, and deposit checks on your behalf due to your extended absence and emotional distress. I never signed that, I said firmly. I would never give her power over me. It is signed, Dana said. Or rather, it has a signature that looks like yours. It is dated August 14th, 2 years ago. I froze. My brain scrolled back through the calendar of my life. August 14th, 2 years ago. That is impossible, I said. Why, were you in town? No, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. I was in California. I was on the fire line at the Mendocino Complex fire. I was sleeping in a tent with 20 other people, surrounded by smoke. There is no way I was in Oregon to sign a document in front of a notary. Are you sure? Dana's voice sharpened. I have my deployment orders, I said. I have my discharge papers. I can prove exactly where I was. I was 500 miles away, holding a shovel, not a pen. Gotcha, Dana said. I could practically hear the smile in her voice. That is it. That is the smoking gun. If you were deployed, the notary stamp is fraudulent, the signature is a forgery, and the entire legal basis for their access to your money is a felony. So what happens now? Now, Dana said, we trigger the clause. Eleanor, your grandmother, inserted a specific provision in the trust protocol years ago. She suspected something was wrong, but she could not prove it without you. The clause states that if the beneficiary makes direct independent contact with the family office, all prior authorizations are immediately voided. We are cutting the cord. Eliana, as of this morning, the checks stop coming to Port Harbor, the mail stops, the access stops. They are going to know, I whispered. Marla tracks that money like a hawk. If a check doesn't come... Let them panic, Dana said coldly. But there is someone who wants to talk to you first. She has been sitting in my office for the last hour, listening to everything. My breath hitched. She? I am transferring the line. Hold on. There was a click, then a silence that felt heavier than the previous one. It wasn't empty silence. It was the silence of a room where someone was breathing, waiting, perhaps shaking. Eliana? The voice was old. It had a tremor in it, like a violin string pulled too tight. But beneath the age, there was steel. It sounded like the woman in the black and white photo. Mrs. Kingsley? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Eleanor, she corrected. Please, I am your grandmother, child. I am your grandmother. I sat down on the cheap office chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. I was told you were dead. And I was told you wanted me dead, Eleanor said. Her voice broke slightly, then firmed up. Your father, Carl, he wrote to me, years ago. He told me that you blamed the Kingsley family for your mother's unhappiness. He said you threw away my gifts. He said you refused to speak to those rich snobs who abandoned Laura. I never said that, I said, tears spilling over my cheeks now, hot and fast. I kept your letters, the ones I found. I kept them in a shoebox. I thought you didn't care. I thought you left us to rot. Oh, my dear girl, Eleanor sighed, a sound of infinite regret. I sent lawyers, I sent private investigators, but every time, Marla produced a letter from you, or what I thought was you, telling us to back off, telling us that if we pushed, you would file for a restraining order. They used your instability as a shield. They said you were fragile, and that our interference caused you mental breakdowns. They made me think I was the crazy one, I admitted. They made me think I was lucky they let me live there. Tell me, Eleanor said. The softness vanished, replaced by a command. Tell me what they did. I need to hear it from you, not the lawyers. You. So I told her. I told her about the rent I paid to live in my own childhood room. I told her about the clothes Marla sold. I told her about the constant gaslighting, the way they made me doubt my own memory. And then, my voice shaking with shame, I told her about the perfume. I told her about the $15 bottle of Velvet Night. I told her how Marla had smelled it like a bloodhound. I told her about the slap, the glass shattering in the sink, the blood on my lip, the way my father stood there drinking his beer, telling me not to provoke her. When I finished, the line was silent for a long time. She hit you, Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, cold and hard as a diamond. Yes. Over $15. Yes. While she was cashing checks for $5,000 that I sent to take care of you. Yes? It ends here, Eleanor said. The rage in her voice was terrifyingly quiet. It ends today. You will never spend another night in that house feeling like a beggar. Eliana, you are a Kingsley, and Kingsleys do not beg. I don't have anywhere else to go, I said. They locked my bank account. I have $20 in my pocket. You have a trust fund worth millions that vests in 6 months, Eleanor said. And you have me? I have already instructed Dana to release an emergency stipend to a new account in your name only. You can walk out of there right now. I can't, I said, panic flaring. If I leave now, Marla will know. She will destroy everything I left behind. She will spin a story. I need to do this right. Smart, Eleanor said approvingly. You are your mother's daughter. She was stubborn too. But listen to me, Eliana. This isn't just about the money. I rewrote my will 3 months ago. I was getting ready to leave everything to a charitable foundation because I thought my granddaughter hated me. She paused. But there is a specific division, Kingsley Community Holdings. It builds affordable housing for veterans. It rehabilitates wounded soldiers. It gives them a place to call home when the world has chewed them up. My heart skipped a beat. I thought about the guys I served with, the ones who came back and couldn't find apartments, the ones sleeping in their cars. I read your file, Eliana, Eleanor continued. I know about your service. I know about the wildfires. You are not just an heiress, you are a soldier, and I want you to run it. I want you to take over Kingsley Community Holdings, not as a gift, but as a job, because you know what it feels like to be trapped in a house that isn't a home. I stared at the wall. A future was opening up in front of me. A future where I wasn't just Eliana the data analyst or Eliana the burden. A future where I had power, where I could help people. I would like that, I said softly. I would like that very much. Then we have work to do, Eleanor said. Dana is going to explain the next steps, but I have one question for you first. A hard question. Ask me. The investigation is going to uncover felonies, fraud, theft, assault. If we pursue this, if we reclaim your life, it likely means prosecution. It means your stepmother and your father could go to prison. She let the word hang there. Prison. I know he's your father, Eleanor said gently. I know it is complicated. If you want to just walk away, cut them off, and leave them in the mud, we can do that. We can seal the records and let them rot in poverty. But if you want justice, if you want to make sure they never do this to anyone else, we have to let the federal agents do their job. I closed my eyes. I saw my father's face, the weak, apologetic smile, the way he handed Marla the checkbook, the way he looked at the floor when she slapped me. Don't provoke her. Eliana. He had watched me drown for 14 years. He had watched his wife steal my mother's legacy, steal my confidence, steal my life. And he had taken a sip of beer. He knew, I said. He knew about the money. He might not have known the exact amount, but he knew she was stealing from me, and he let her hit me. Yes, Eleanor said. I don't want revenge, I said, surprised by the clarity of my own voice. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be cruel. Justice is not cruelty. Dana Holt's voice cut in, calm and professional. Justice is accountability. You are not attacking them. Eliana, you are protecting yourself, and you are stopping a crime that is still in progress. I took a deep breath. I thought about the $15 perfume. I thought about the helicopter sound I heard in the rain, the sound of freedom I thought I would never have. Do it, I said. Do whatever you need to do. Let the law handle them. Good, Eleanor said. Now, pass the phone back to Dana. We have an extraction to plan. And Eliana? Yes, Grandma? The word felt strange on my tongue, but good, like honey. When you walk out of that house, she said, keep your head up. You bought that perfume with your own money. Wear it. I handed the phone back to the lawyer, my hand trembling, but not from fear. For the first time in years, I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from adrenaline. The cage door was unlocking, and the tiger inside wasn't sleeping anymore. It was waking up. The invitation wasn't really an invitation. It was a summons. We are going to dinner at the Harbor Lantern, Marla had announced that morning, standing in the doorway of my room while I pretended to fold laundry. 7 o'clock. Wear something nice. Not that gray sweater you always wear. People need to see that this family is still standing strong, despite your best efforts to divide us with your moods. I almost said no. My instinct was to retreat, to lock the door and wait for Dana Holt's extraction team. But Dana had been clear. Maintain normalcy. If she escalates, let her. We need her to feel confident. So I put on a navy blue dress I hadn't worn in 3 years, applied my foundation thick enough to cover the fading yellow bruise on my cheek, and drove to the restaurant. The Harbor Lantern was the kind of place where the menus didn't have prices listed on the specials board, and the air smelled of brown butter and old money. It was the most expensive restaurant in Port Harbor. For a family that supposedly couldn't afford a water bill last week, this was a bold choice. When I walked into the private dining room at the back, I stopped cold. I had expected a tense dinner with just my father and Marla. Instead, I walked into an ambush. There were 12 people seated around the long table covered in white linen, my Aunt Janice, 2 of my cousins, the church pastor, Reverend Miller, and his wife, a few of Marla's prayer warrior friends. Marla had not just invited family, she had curated a jury. There she is, Marla exclaimed, standing up and clapping her hands together like a seal. She was wearing a sequined top that caught the dim light aggressively. Our wandering girl returns to the fold. Come, sit, Eliana, sit next to me. She patted the empty chair beside her. It was the seat of honor, or perhaps the seat of the accused. I sat down. My father was across from me, staring intently at his bread roll. He looked smaller than usual in his ill-fitting suit jacket. He knew this was a performance. He just didn't know the script. We are just so glad to have everyone here, Marla began, tapping her spoon against her wine glass. The table quieted down. The pastor smiled benevolently. I know things have been strained lately. Families go through storms. Eliana has been having a hard time adjusting since she came back from her service, dealing with a lot of anger and confusion. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Her grip was tight, her fingernails digging into the fabric of my dress. But we forgive, Marla declared, looking around the table for approval. We are a family of forgiveness, even when there are secrets, even when there are mysterious phone calls taken in private. She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. She knew I had been on the phone. She didn't know who I was talking to, but she knew I was hiding something. She was trying to shame it out of me. Amen, Aunt Janice murmured. Let us pray, Reverend Miller said. We bowed our heads. I kept my eyes open, staring at the heavy silverware. Lord, the pastor intoned, we thank you for this bounty. We thank you for softening Eliana's heart and bringing her back to the guidance of her parents. Bless this food and bless the new ventures this family is undertaking. Amen. New ventures? The waiters brought out appetizers, calamari, crab cakes, shrimp cocktails. Marla ordered a bottle of white wine for the table. The cost of this meal was easily going to be over $400. I ate a piece of bread, tasting nothing but ash. I waited. I knew this wasn't just a dinner. Marla never spent money without an agenda. It happened after the main course was cleared. Marla signaled to the waiter, who brought over not a dessert menu, but a thick leather folder. Marla took it, cleared her throat, and placed it on the table in front of me. Eliana, she said, her voice dropping to a serious, businesslike register. We have been doing a lot of praying, your father and I. We know you feel trapped in your job. We know you feel like you aren't contributing enough to the legacy of this family. I contribute $2,000 a month, Marla, I said quietly. Hush, she said, waving a hand dismissively. Pennies, really, compared to the cost of living. But we want to help you. We want to build something together, a legacy. She opened the folder. Inside was a glossy brochure for a franchise spa called Serenity Falls, and underneath that, a loan application. A spa? I asked, looking at the photos of hot stones and bamboo. It is a gold mine, Marla said, her eyes gleaming. I have the certification, I have the know-how, but we need capital to secure the location. The bank is being difficult with Dad and me because of some unfair credit reporting in the past. She pushed a pen toward me. We need a co-signer, Eliana, someone with a clean record, and since you are living under our roof, benefiting from our care, it is only right that you step up. It is an investment, for all of us. I looked at the loan amount, $150,000. Marla, I cannot co-sign a loan for $150,000, I said. I make $45,000 a year. No bank is going to approve that. Oh, they will, Marla said, her smile tightening. We found a specialized lender. They look at future assets. My blood ran cold. I looked closer at the document. It wasn't a standard bank loan. It was a high-interest private lending agreement, and there, in the collateral section, in small print, was a clause that made my heart stop. Borrower agrees to pledge all current and future assets, including but not limited to real estate, vehicle titles, and any irrevocable trust fund allocations or inheritance distributions vesting within the next 12 months. I read it twice. Trust fund allocations. She knew. She wasn't just guessing. She wasn't just hoping. She knew exactly when the trust vested, my 30th birthday, which was 8 months away. She was trying to get me to sign away my future before I even officially had it. I looked up. Marla was watching me, her eyes predatory. She was betting on my ignorance. She thought I didn't know the trust existed, so I wouldn't understand what I was signing. She thought I would just see future inheritance and think of the beat-up sedan Dad drove. "I am not signing this," I said, closing the folder. The silence at the table was instant. The clinking of forks stopped. "Excuse me?" Marla said, her voice rising. "I said no," I repeated, louder this time. "I am not co-signing a loan for a spa. Marla, I am not pledging my future assets for your business." "This isn't just my business," Marla snapped, the mask slipping. "This is for the family. Your father is breaking his back working in that warehouse. I am trying to save us. And you sit there, with your selfish attitude, and say no?" "Eliana," Aunt Janice piped up from across the table, her mouth full of crab cake. "Don't be stubborn. Your mother is trying to secure a future for you." "She is not my mother," I said, looking directly at Janice. "And this isn't a future. It is debt." "You ungrateful little brat," Marla hissed. She stood up, knocking her chair back. The restaurant patrons turned to look. "After everything we have done, after we took you in when you came back broken, you would deny your father a chance at retirement because you want to hoard money you haven't even earned?" "What money am I hoarding, Marla?" I asked, my voice steady. "I thought we were broke. I thought we couldn't afford the water bill." "You know what I am talking about," she shouted. "You think you are so smart, sneaking around? You think you are better than us because of where you come from? Because of that blood?" "Marla, sit down," Dad mumbled, looking terrified. "People are staring." "Let them stare," Marla yelled. She gestured to the table, to her audience. "Let them see what I have to deal with. A daughter who would rather see her parents starve than share her blessings." "Blessings," Reverend Miller said softly. "Eliana, if you have been blessed with resources, Scripture says—" "Stop," I said. I didn't shout it. I said it with the authority of a commanding officer. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I set it on the table. "Screen up." I tapped the red record button. The timer started counting. 0:01, 0:02. "What are you doing?" Marla asked, her eyes darting to the phone. "I am recording this," I said calmly, "for my records and for the lawyer." "Lawyer?" Aunt Janice laughed nervously. "What does she need a lawyer for?" I ignored Janice. I looked straight at Marla. "You mentioned trust fund allocations in that contract. Marla," I said clearly. "And just now, you said I was hoarding money. How do you know about any trust fund? You always told me my mother's family died penniless." Marla froze. She realized she had walked into a corner. She blinked rapidly, her mind scrambling for a lie. I didn't say that," she stammered. "It is just standard language in the contract. The bank put it there." "No, Marla," I said, leaning forward. "Standard language doesn't reference specific vesting periods, and you just accused me of hoarding blessings. How do you know there are blessings to hoard?" "Because checks have come here," Marla screamed. It burst out of her before she could stop it. The frustration, the greed, the sheer arrogance of 14 years of theft. It all boiled over. "Because I have seen the envelopes," she ranted, her face flushing red. "I have seen what they send. $5,000 just for breathing. While we scrape and save, it is disgusting. That money should have gone to the people who actually take care of you." The entire table gasped. Even Reverend Miller looked shocked. "So you admit it," I said, my voice low and deadly. "You admit that checks came for me, and you admit that I never saw them." "I managed them," Marla yelled. "I used them for the household, for your food, for your room. I am your guardian. It was my right." I was 25 years old. "Marla," I said, "you weren't my guardian. You were my landlord, and you forged my signature." "I did what I had to do." She slammed her hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "You were too unstable. You would have blown it on drugs, or run away. I kept this family afloat with that money. It is mine by rights. I earned it putting up with you." I looked at my father. He was pale, sweating, staring at Marla with horror, not because of what she did, but because she was saying it out loud in front of the pastor. "Dad," I said. He looked up at me. His eyes were watery. "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know she was signing my name?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Marla, who was breathing heavily, her chest heaving. She said it was better this way," Dad whispered. "Carl!" Marla shrieked. "She said you wouldn't understand," Dad continued, his voice gaining a tiny shred of strength. "She said the Kingsleys were trying to buy you. She said we needed the money to survive." "So you knew," I said. "I didn't know it was 5,000, he mumbled. I thought it was a few hundred, for groceries." "Liar," Marla turned on him. "You knew. You signed the new truck lease. You knew exactly where that down payment came from." I picked up my phone. I stopped the recording. "That is enough," I said. I stood up. My legs felt solid. My hands were steady. What is going on, Eliana?" Reverend Miller asked, looking from me to Marla. "Is this true? Has there been theft?" "It is a federal investigation." "Reverend," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. "It is called mail fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. Kingsley Holdings and the FBI are already involved." Marla's face went from red to a terrified, draining white. The word FBI hit the table like a bomb. You are lying," she whispered. "You are just a little girl. You don't have the guts." "I didn't call the police, Marla," I said. "I called Eleanor Kingsley, my grandmother. The billionaire you told me was dead." Marla gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. She looked at the phone in my hand like it was a loaded gun. Carl stood up slowly. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "You actually called them?" he asked. His voice was trembling. "Eliana, you called them?" He didn't ask if they existed. He asked if I called them. He confirmed, in 5 words, that he had been part of the lie for my entire life. I looked at him, the man I had tried to protect, the man I had joined the army to support, the man I had bought a $15 perfume to feel pretty for, and I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, just a hollow space where a father should have been. "I did," I said. I picked up my purse. I looked at the half-eaten crab cakes, the expensive wine, the stunned faces of the relatives who had spent years mocking me. "I am leaving," I said. "Don't follow me. Don't come to my room. Don't speak to me." "You can't just leave," Marla screeched, lunging for my arm. "You owe us. That money is ours." I stepped back, smooth and fast, a move I learned in self-defense training. Her hand grasped at empty air. "I don't owe you a damn thing," I said. I looked around the restaurant. The waiters were watching. The diners were watching. I saw the manager approaching, looking concerned. "Enjoy the meal," I said to the table. "I hope it was worth it, because it is the last one you will ever eat on my dime." I turned and walked out. "Eliana, get back here," Marla screamed behind me. "I will call the police. I will tell them you hit me. I will tell them you are crazy." Her voice faded as I pushed through the heavy oak doors of the restaurant and out into the cool night air. My heart was pounding, but my head was clear. I walked to my car, unlocked it, and got in. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I checked my phone. I had a message from Dana Holt. "Extraction approved. 48 hours. Sit tight." I started the engine. I wasn't going home to sleep. I was going home to pack. And for the first time in 29 years, the road ahead didn't look like a dead end. It looked like a runway. The vibration of my phone against the desk surface sounded like a drill. It was 10:45 in the morning on Thursday. I was sitting in my cubicle at Atlas Ridge, surrounded by the low hum of servers and the click of keyboards, but my mind was hundreds of miles away, navigating a landscape of legal landmines. I opened the secure messaging app Dana Holt had installed on my phone the day before. Dana, we need to move the timeline up. You cannot stay in that house another week. I typed back, my fingers stiff. Why? Did they find out? Dana, no, but the forensic accounting is complete. The total misappropriated funds exceed $400,000 over 14 years. We have evidence of 312 separate counts of wire fraud and 40 counts of identity theft. The district attorney in your county has seen the preliminary file. He is not just interested. Eliana, he is horrified. I stared at the number. $400,000. It was enough to buy a house. It was enough to pay for medical school. It was enough to have saved me from a decade of scraping change from the couch cushions to buy gas. Dana, once we file the official complaint, the warrant will be issued within hours. If you are in that house when the police arrive to serve it, and Marla realizes the walls are closing in, we cannot guarantee your safety. Narcissists do not de-escalate when cornered. They explode. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I have nowhere to go. Dana, if I pack a bag, she will see. If I leave, she will report me missing. She watches the driveway. A new name popped up in the chat. Marco Rivera. Marco. Ms. Graham, this is Marco Rivera. I am the head of security for Kingsley Holdings. I am looking at the satellite view of your residence right now. 142 Cedar Lane. You have a large open field directly behind the property, correct? The old high school football field? Yes, I typed. It is abandoned. Marco. Good. We are not going to have you drive out. We are going to lift you out. I blinked at the screen. Lift me out? Marco. Mrs. Kingsley has a scheduled property inspection in Seattle this weekend. Her private helicopter, a Bell 429, is currently in a hangar in Portland. That is 20 minutes flight time from your location. We are coordinating with the local sheriff's department to execute the arrest warrant simultaneously with your extraction. My heart began to race, a familiar thumping rhythm I hadn't felt since my last deployment. This was not a family dispute anymore. This was an operation. Dana, we have set the time for Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Does that work for the pattern of life in the house? I thought about Saturday. Marla's schedule was rigid. Saturday afternoon was her fellowship time. She was hosting the ladies from the church choir for tea and scripture study. Saturday at 2 is perfect. I typed, Marla is hosting a party. The house will be full of witnesses. Marco, even better, maximum distraction. We will secure the perimeter at 13:59. The bird touches down at 1400 hours. You walk out the front door. We are gone by 14:05. Dana. Eliana. There is one more thing. Eleanor insists on being on the flight. I paused. She is 88 years old. Is that safe? Dana. I advised against it. Marco advised against it. She told us that if her granddaughter has to watch her old world burn to the ground, she deserves to see the person who pulled the switch. She is coming. I put the phone down. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the icy clarity of tactical focus. I was back in the mindset. Mission parameters set. Extraction confirmed. The next 48 hours were a study in deception. I went home that night and played the part of the chastised daughter. I ate dinner in silence. I listened to Marla complain about the disrespect I had shown at the restaurant. I apologized, using the words she wanted to hear. I am sorry I made a scene, I said, looking at my plate. I was just stressed about work. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Marla smirked, satisfied. Well, at least you admit it. We will discuss your repayment plan for the dinner bill later. And that loan application? I expect it signed by Sunday. Okay, I said. Sunday. It was a lie that tasted sweet on my tongue. By Sunday. Marla wouldn't be thinking about loan applications. She would be thinking about bail money. On Friday morning, I started my prep. I couldn't pack a suitcase. Marla checked my room too often. I needed a go bag, something small enough to look like gym gear or work files, but essential enough to restart my life. I took a simple black backpack. Into the bottom, I shoved my birth certificate and social security card, which I had managed to steal back from Marla's filing cabinet months ago. I rolled up 2 pairs of socks, 3 days of underwear, and a clean t-shirt, compressing them tight. Then, I went to the bathroom trash can. I dug down to the bottom where I had hidden the wad of toilet paper containing the shattered remains of the velvet night bottle. I carefully unwrapped the glass shards. The smell was faint now, just a ghost of vanilla and sandalwood. I found a thick pair of wool socks and placed the jagged glass pieces inside, wrapping them into a tight ball. It was a hazard. It was trash. But it was my reminder. I needed to remember that they didn't just steal my money. They stole my dignity. And I was taking the evidence of their cruelty with me to my new life. I zipped the bag. It looked innocuous, just a backpack. When I got to Atlas Ridge, I walked straight to Liam's desk. He was drinking an energy drink and staring at a dual-monitor setup full of code. "Liam," I said. He spun around. He saw the bag in my hand. He saw the look in my eyes, the look of someone who has checked their parachute and is standing at the open door of the plane. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice. "You okay? You look intense." "I need a favor," I said. "I need you to hold on to this bag for me. Put it in your car or under your desk. Do not open it. Just keep it safe." He looked at the black backpack, then back at my face. He didn't ask what was in it. He was a good friend. He just nodded. "Is this it?" he asked softly. "Are you getting out?" "Saturday," I said. "But I can't leave with a bag. It would tip them off. Can you bring it to me? Later? Or can I pick it up from you when this is over?" "I will keep it safe," Liam said. He took the bag and tucked it deep under his desk, behind the subwoofer. "Do you need a ride? A place to hide?" "No," I said. "I have a ride. It is unconventional, but I might need you to cover for me on Monday if I'm not here." "Unconventional ride," Liam repeated, a small smile touching his lips. "Okay, Eliana, whatever you are doing, good luck. Don't look back." "I won't," I promised. Friday night was the longest night of my life. The house was quiet. Carl was asleep in front of the television, the blue light flickering over his slack face. Marla was in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables for her Saturday party. I lay in my narrow twin bed, staring at the ceiling fan. I knew every crack in the plaster. I knew the sound the heater made when it kicked on, a groan followed by a rattle. I knew the smell of the house, old carpet, potpourri, and secrets. I listened to the house breathe. For 20 years, this structure had been my prison. It held the memory of my mother's absence. It held the echo of Marla's shouting. It held the silence of my father's cowardice. I thought about the helicopter sitting in a hangar in Portland, a machine of metal and fuel, waiting for a pilot to turn the key. I thought of Eleanor Kingsley, a woman I had never met, sitting in a hotel suite, probably looking at a map of my neighborhood. I checked my phone one last time under the covers. Marco. Assets are staged. Warrant signed by Judge Harrison at 1600 hours today. Sheriff Deputy Miller and his team have the briefing packet. They are treating this as high risk due to the financial value and potential for domestic volatility. Stay calm. Stick to the timeline. I turned off the phone and hid it inside my pillowcase. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I rehearsed. Step 1. Wake up. Coffee. Act submissive. Step 2. Help Marla set up for the party. Arrange the cookies. Put out the napkins. Step 3. 1:55 p.m. Go to the front porch. Step 4. Wait for the sound. I pictured the moment. I pictured the wind from the rotors flattening Marla's prize-winning petunias. I pictured the look on her face when she realized the noise wasn't passing by. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I finally drifted into a light, restless doze. I dreamed I was falling, but instead of hitting the ground, I was caught by a giant hand made of linen paper and steel. Saturday morning dawned gray and overcast, perfect cover. Marla was up at 7, manic with energy. "Eliana, don't just stand there. The choir ladies will be here at 1. I need the baseboards dusted. I need the silver polished." I moved through the house like a ghost. I dusted. I polished. I nodded when she criticized my technique. "You missed a spot," she snapped, pointing to a smudge on the teapot. "Honestly, Eliana, how do you expect to run a household one day if you cannot even wipe silver correctly? It is a good thing you will have that spa to keep you busy. You are not cut out for domestic life." "You are right, Marla," I said, rubbing the spot. "I am really not." By noon, the house smelled of baking cookies and desperation. Marla went upstairs to change into her hosting outfit, a floral dress that was too bright for the weather. Carl put on a polo shirt and retreated to the garage to tinker, his usual strategy for avoiding Marla's social events. At 1 o'clock, the cars started arriving. Mrs. Higgins, the pastor's wife, the gossip circle of Port Harbor. They filed in, cooing over the daycare, praising Marla's hospitality. They looked at me with that pitying, condescending smile they reserved for the troubled stepdaughter. "Eliana, dear, you look tired," Mrs. Gable said, patting my arm. "Are you still working those long hours at that computer job?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Very long hours." "Well, work is good for the soul," she said, moving on to the cookie tray. The living room filled with chatter. Marla was in her element, holding court in the center of the room, recounting a story about how she had saved the family finances again this month through sheer prayer and couponing. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them. It was 1:35. 25 minutes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One short vibration. Marco. Airborne. ETA 20 minutes. I went to the sink and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 1:45. I walked into the living room. Marla was laughing at a joke. She saw me and frowned. "Eliana, check the coffee pot. It is getting low." "In a minute," I said. "Now," she corrected. I didn't move. I stood by the window. I could see the street. It was empty. Quiet. 1:50. Marco. 10 mics out. Ground units holding at the intersection. I looked at my father, who had come in from the garage to grab a cookie. He looked at me, sensing something shifting in the air. "Ellie?" he asked. "You okay?" "I am fine, Dad," I said. "I am just waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For my ride?" Marla turned her head. "Ride? You are not going anywhere. You are staying here to help clean up." "No, Marla," I said. "I am not." 1:55. I could hear it now, very faint, like a heartbeat in the sky. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The guests didn't hear it yet over their chatter, but I heard it. It was the same sound I had heard in the rain the night she hit me. But this time, it was louder. It was lower. It was coming with purpose. 1:58. The sound grew. It went from a thumping to a roar. The window panes rattled in their frames. The water in the flower vase on the table rippled. "What is that?" Mrs. Gable asked, looking up at the ceiling. "Sounds like a low-flying plane," Carl said, frowning. The roar became deafening. It wasn't just passing by. It was on top of us. The house began to vibrate. The china cups rattled on their saucers. "It is too loud," Marla shouted, looking at the window. "What on earth is going on?" My phone buzzed again. "Marco. Touchdown in 60 seconds. Go." I stepped away from the window. I looked at Marla. "That is for me," I said. I turned and walked to the front door. "Eliana," Marla yelled, starting to follow me. "Where do you think you are going?" I opened the front door. The wind hit me first, a wash of air pushed by the massive rotors of a sleek black helicopter that was descending rapidly toward the center of the cul-de-sac. It was huge. It had the letters KH painted in gold on the tail. The noise was incredible. It drowned out Marla's screaming. It drowned out the barking of the neighborhood dogs. Cars were screeching to a halt at the end of the street. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows. Behind them, police cruisers. Lights flashing, but sirens off. I stepped onto the porch. The helicopter hovered for a second, kicking up a storm of leaves and dust. before settling onto the asphalt of the street, its skids straddling the center line. The side door slid open. A man in a dark tactical suit jumped out. Marco. He didn't run. He moved with precise, fluid speed. He spotted me on the porch and raised a hand. Behind me, Marla stumbled out the door, her hair whipping around her face in the rotor wash. The guests crowded behind her, mouths open, phones out. "What is this?" Marla shrieked, though I could barely hear her over the turbine whine. "Who are these people?" I didn't look back at her. I walked down the steps. I didn't run. I walked. I walked past the dying hydrangeas. I walked past the mailbox where she had stolen my letters for 14 years. I walked past my father's rust bucket sedan. Marco met me at the edge of the driveway. He handed me a headset. "Ms. Graham?" he yelled over the noise. "Yes." "Let's go, the sheriff is moving in." I looked past him. The police officers were already out of their cars. They weren't looking at the helicopter. They were walking briskly up the driveway toward Marla, who was standing there, frozen, her floral dress flapping violently in the wind of my departure. I climbed into the cabin. It smelled of rich leather and aviation fuel. Sitting in the back, strapped into a cream-colored seat, wearing an oxygen cannula and a headset, was a small woman with white hair and eyes that burned like lasers. Eleanor Kingsley. She reached out a hand. It was thin, covered in age spots, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Hello, Eliana," she said, her voice clear through the headset as I pulled mine on. "Hello, Grandma," I said. Marco jumped in and slid the door shut, sealing out the noise of the world. The sudden silence was shocking. "Clear for lift," Marco said into his mic. As the helicopter surged upward, my stomach dropped, but my spirit soared. I looked out the window. Below me, the house was shrinking. I saw the police officers surrounding Marla. I saw her arm raised, pointing at the sky, shouting something that no longer mattered. I saw my father sitting on the porch steps, his head in his hands. "Don't look away," Eleanor said softly. "Watch it, remember it, and then let it go." I watched until the house was just a white speck in a sea of gray roofs. I watched until Port Harbor was just a line on the coast. Then, I turned forward, toward the horizon, toward the city, toward the rest of my life. I reached into my pocket and touched the only thing I had brought with me besides the clothes on my back, the key to a safety deposit box I would open on Monday. The plan had worked perfectly. The extraction was clean, the prisoner was free, and the war was just beginning. The morning of the extraction felt less like a Saturday and more like the holding pattern before a bomb detonation. The air in the kitchen was thick, smelling of lemon furniture polish and the aggressive potpourri Marla kept in bowls on every surface. I moved through the space with a practiced fluidity, keeping my elbows tucked in, making myself as two-dimensional as possible. I poured the coffee, I wiped the counter, I placed the sugar bowl exactly 3 inches from the creamer, just the way Marla liked it. "You are quiet today," Marla said. She was standing at the island, arranging store-bought cookies onto a crystal platter to make them look homemade. Her eyes were sharp, scanning me for defects. "Usually on Saturdays you are moping around, sighing, trying to make me feel guilty for asking you to do basic chores. Today, you are like a robot." "I am just tired. Marla," I said, my voice flat. "I want to get everything perfect for your guests." "Don't patronize me," she snapped, adjusting a macaroon. "You are up to something. I can smell it. You have that look on your face, the one you used to get when you were hiding bad grades." She was right. Of course, Marla had a predator's instinct for fear. But she was misinterpreting the source. She thought I was hiding a mistake. She didn't realize I was hiding a war plan. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a single, long vibration. I turned my back to her, pretending to scrub a stubborn spot on the sink, and slid the phone out just enough to see the screen. "Dana, warrant issued. Teams are moving. 30 minutes. My heart kicked against my ribs like a trapped bird. 30 minutes. 1,800 seconds. That was all that stood between me and the end of this life. "Who is texting you?" Marla demanded. I slipped the phone back in. "Just a spam alert, about car insurance." "You are lying," she said, but the doorbell rang before she could press the issue. The first of the choir ladies had arrived. For the next 20 minutes, I played the role of the invisible servant. I took coats, I refilled teacups. I smiled when Mrs. Gable commented on how blessed I was to have a stepmother who kept such a lovely home. I felt like I was floating above my own body, watching this scene from a great distance. 10 minutes. I thought, just hold it together for 10 minutes. I went to the front hallway to check my purse. I needed to make sure my ID was accessible for the extraction. I opened the small side pocket, just to touch the plastic edge of my license. "What are you digging for?" I froze. Marla was standing right behind me. She had left her guests in the living room to follow me. Her paranoia was itching under her skin. "Nothing," I said, closing the bag. "Just checking for a tissue." "You are acting skittish," she hissed. Stepping into my personal space, she grabbed the strap of my purse. "Let me see." "Marla, don't. It is private." "There is no privacy in my house," she whispered aggressively. Yanking the bag from my shoulder, she unzipped it before I could stop her. She rifled through it, her hands rough and invasive. She bypassed the wallet. She bypassed the keys. Her hand closed around a small glass vial. It was a sample size of perfume, not Velvet Night. It was a tiny tester of something floral that Liam had left on my desk yesterday with a sticky note that said, "To replace the casualty of war." I had forgotten to take it out. Marla pulled it out, holding it up to the light like it was a vial of poison. "Perfume," she said. The word sounded like a curse. "After everything? After the money you wasted? You went out and bought more?" "I didn't buy it," I said, keeping my voice low so the guests wouldn't hear. "A friend gave it to me. It was free." "A friend," she mocked. "You don't have friends. Eliana, you have enablers. You have people who help you act like a princess while your father and I are drowning in debt. Give it back, Marla." "No. No." Her eyes went wide and wild. "You think you are so special, don't you? Walking around with your nose in the air, smelling like roses while I smell like bleach and hard work. You are mocking me. In my own house?" "I am not mocking you. I am just existing. You are a parasite." She didn't whisper this time. She shouted it. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into the soft flesh of my bicep, and dragged me toward the living room. I stumbled, trying to keep my balance, but she was fueled by a manic strength. "Look at her," Marla announced to the room full of women holding teacups. "Look at this. While we sit here praying for financial mercy, she is hoarding luxury goods in her bag." She threw the tiny vial onto the carpet in the center of the room. It didn't break, which seemed to infuriate her more. "Marla, dear," Mrs. Higgins said, looking uncomfortable. "It is just a sample. Maybe we should—" "Don't you tell me what it is." Marla spun on her. "You don't live with her. You don't know the disrespect. She plays the victim, but she is laughing at us. She is laughing at you." She turned back to me. I was standing by the archway, rubbing my arm where she had pinched me. "You think you are better than this family," Marla spat, closing the distance between us. "You think because you work at that fancy office and use big words that you are too good for us, but you are nothing. You are a charity case." "I pay rent, Marla," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking at my sides. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. "Rent?" She laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You call that pittance rent? You cost us thousands. The stress alone is worth millions." "Then let me go," I said. "If I am such a burden, let me leave." "So you can run off and tell lies about us?" She stepped closer. "So you can play the martyr? No. You stay right here where I can see you, where I can control the damage you do." She raised her hand. I saw it coming. I could have blocked it. I knew how to block it. But I stood still. I let it happen. I needed them to see. I needed every woman in that room to witness exactly who she was. The slap was harder than the last one. It connected with my ear and jaw. A ringing impact that knocked my head back. I stumbled, my shoulder hitting the wall with a dull thud. The room went dead silent. Mrs. Gable put her teacup down with a clatter. "Marla!" "She made me do it!" Marla screamed, panting. She looked at her hand, then at me. "She provoked me. She looks at me with those dead eyes and she judges me." I slowly straightened up. My ear was ringing. My cheek burned. But I didn't cry. I didn't look down. I looked straight at her. "That is assault," I said quietly. "It is discipline," Marla shrieked. My father appeared from the hallway. He had been hiding in the garage, but the shouting had drawn him out. He stood there, looking at me pressed against the wall, looking at his wife's heaving chest. "Marla," he said, his voice weak. "Stop. People are watching." "Shut up, Carl," she whipped around. "You are pathetic. Standing there defending her, defending the bastard child of that woman who thought she was too good for you." Carl flinched as if he had been slapped himself. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Fix this." He was silently begging. "Take the blame so she stops yelling." I looked at him, and the last thread of attachment I had to him snapped. It didn't hurt. It just vanished. "I am not defending her," Carl mumbled, looking at his shoes. Not in front of the church group, Marla." "They need to know," Marla ranted. "They need to know what I suffer." I stepped away from the wall. I smoothed my shirt. "This is the last time," I said. The words were cold, heavy stones dropping into a pond. "This is the last time you will ever touch me." Marla stared at me. She saw something in my face she hadn't seen before. It wasn't fear. It wasn't defiance. It was finality. Panic flickered in her eyes. She sensed she was losing her grip. And when a narcissist loses control, they escalate to the nuclear option. "Oh, is that so?" she sneered. "You think you can threaten me? You think you can leave? I will have you committed. Eliana, I have done it before, and I will do it again. I will go to the judge on Monday. I will tell them you are a danger to yourself. I will get full guardianship." She pointed a finger at my face. "I will lock you away in a facility where you can't spend a dime," she hissed. "And I will manage your affairs. I will make sure every penny you have comes to this family to pay for the misery you caused. You won't see the light of day until you are 40. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. "Guardianship," I repeated. "Like the one you used to cash the checks?" Marla blinked. "What?" I held the phone up. The screen was bright. The red recording icon was pulsing. "I am recording, Marla," I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "You just said you would manage my affairs. You said you would take every penny. Tell me about the checks." "Put that away." She lunged for the phone. I stepped back. "Tell me about the checks from Kingsley Holdings, the ones you have been cashing for 14 years. "I had to," she screamed, forgetting the audience, forgetting the lie. The confession poured out of her like venom. "You were too young. You didn't deserve that kind of money. $5,000 a month for a girl who does nothing? I raised you. I cooked for you. I deserve that money. It is mine. It is reimbursement." The gasps from the church ladies were audible this time. $5,000? Mrs. Higgins whispered. "A month?" "She stole it!" Marla pointed at me, her logic completely fracturing. "She stole it from us by not giving it to me willingly. It was sent to my house, to my mailbox. That makes it mine." "It was addressed to me," I said, "and you forged my signature." "I signed it because you are incompetent," Marla yelled, "and I will keep signing it. You will never leave this house with that money. I will burn it before I let you have it." The room was frozen in a tableau of horror. Marla, red-faced and panting, Carl, gray and shrinking into the wallpaper, the guests, realizing they were witnessing a felony. And then, the window panes began to vibrate. It started as a low hum, felt in the teeth before it was heard by the ears. Thrum, thrum, thrum. Marla stopped screaming. She looked around, confused. "What is that?" The hum grew into a rattle. The teacups on the coffee table began to dance on their saucers. The picture frames on the mantelpiece shook. "Is it an earthquake?" someone asked. "No," I said. I looked at the window. The gray light outside was darkening. A shadow was falling over the house. The sound exploded. It wasn't just a noise. It was a physical force, the roar of a turbine engine, the rhythmic, percussive beat of massive rotors slicing through the air directly above the roof. The entire house shook. Dust fell from the ceiling fixture. "What is happening?" Marla shrieked, covering her ears. I turned to the front door. "My ride is here," I said. The guests, driven by instinct and curiosity, rushed past me. They threw open the front door and spilled out onto the porch. I followed them. The wind hit us instantly, a hurricane-force gale whipped up by the machine descending from the clouds. Leaves, twigs, and debris were swirling in a chaotic vortex. And there it was. Hovering just above the street, its black paint gleaming even under the overcast sky, was a Bell 429 helicopter. It was a sleek, terrifyingly beautiful beast. On the side, in understated gold letters, was the logo, KH. Kingsley Holdings. Marla stumbled out onto the porch, her hair whipping across her face, her dress billowing. She looked up, her mouth hanging open in a silent scream of disbelief. She looked at the helicopter, then she looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw Marla Graham truly afraid. She wasn't looking at a victim anymore. She was looking at a power she couldn't scream at, couldn't slap, and couldn't manipulate. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just adjusted my backpack strap. "Goodbye, Marla," I said. I walked down the stairs, into the wind, and I didn't look back to see if she heard me. The roar of the engine said everything that needed to be said. The sound of the helicopter did not just fill the air. It displaced it, the entire cul-de-sac, usually a sanctuary of lawnmowers and quiet desperation, had been turned into a wind tunnel. The rotor wash flattened the manicured hedges and sent garbage cans skittering across driveways like tumbleweeds. Through the vibrating living room window, I saw the neighborhood pouring out. Mrs. Higgins was on her porch in a bathrobe, clutching her chest. The teenagers from 3 doors down were sprinting across their lawns, phones held high, live streaming the chaos. A man I didn't recognize was standing with a half-drunk coffee mug, staring up at the black belly of the machine hovering above the rooftops. They were all watching us. For years, Marla had curated a perfect image for these people, painting our house as a fortress of Christian charity and me as the broken thing inside it. Now, a multi-million-dollar machine was literally blowing the roof off her story. A black SUV with tinted windows screeched around the corner, jumping the curb and tearing up a strip of Marla's prized fescue grass. It slammed to a halt directly in front of our walkway. Right behind it, 2 county sheriff cruisers pulled in, their lights flashing blue and red, silent but urgent. The doors of the SUV flew open. "What is happening?" Marla shrieked. She was gripping the doorframe, her face a mask of confusion that was rapidly curdling into terror. "Who are these people?" Men and women in dark suits and windbreakers emblazoned with federal investigators spilled out of the vehicles. They moved with the precise, aggressive speed of people who had done this 1,000 times. A uniformed deputy marched up the steps, flanked by a man in a suit holding a thick stack of paperwork. The deputy pounded on the open door. Bang, bang, bang. "Sheriff's Department," he bellowed over the roar of the helicopter. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Marla Graham and the seizure of electronic devices." Marla's reaction was pure instinct. She tried to slam the door. "No," she screamed. "You cannot come in here. I have guests." She threw her weight against the wood, but the investigator in the suit was faster. He jammed a heavy boot into the jamb and shoved the door back open with a single, powerful thrust. Marla stumbled back, nearly tripping over the entryway rug. "Ma'am, step away from the door," the investigator shouted. He held up the paperwork, the warrant stamped with the seal of the Federal District Court. "We have a warrant signed by Judge Harrison for mail fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. Step back." The police swarmed into the hallway. The choir ladies in the living room were shrinking back against the sofas, clutching their purses, their eyes wide with shock. "This is a mistake," Marla yelled, her voice cracking. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "She did this. That girl is unstable. She called you to embarrass us. She is lying." My father, Carl, was standing by the coat rack, his face the color of old ash. An agent walked up to him and handed him a photocopy of a check. I saw it from where I stood. It was a blown-up image of a Kingsley Holdings disbursement check for $5,800, signed on the back with a looped, childish scrawl. "Mr. Graham," the agent said loudly, "we also have questions regarding your knowledge of these funds and the tax filings for the last decade." Dad looked at the check, then he looked at Marla. His knees seemed to give out, and he slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. "I didn't sign it," he whispered, terrified. "I didn't sign it." "Carl, get up!" Marla screamed at him. "Don't let them do this. Tell them she is crazy, tell them." Then, through the chaos of heavy boots and shouting voices, a figure appeared in the doorway. It was Dana Holt. She looked exactly like she sounded on the phone. Sharp, professional, and dangerous. She stepped past a police officer, her eyes scanning the room until they locked onto mine. She didn't smile, she just gave me a single, firm nod. Her eyes said everything. "The cage is open, walk out." I was still holding my coffee cup. It was a cheap ceramic mug with a chip in the rim, half full of lukewarm coffee I had poured 20 minutes ago to play the part of the dutiful daughter. I looked at it. I looked at the house. For years, I had been told I owed them. I owed them for the roof. I owed them for the food. I owed them for tolerating my existence. Marla had monetized every breath I took in this house. I walked over to the side table by the door. I placed the cup down on a coaster. I did it slowly, deliberately. I didn't owe them a damn thing, not even a finished cup of coffee. I turned toward the door. "Eliana!" Marla lunged. She broke away from the deputy who was trying to read her rights. She reached for me, her fingers hooked like claws, her face twisted into a rictus of pure hate. "You don't get to leave," she howled. "You belong to this house. You ungrateful, wretched little—" "Back off." A sheriff's deputy stepped between us, his hand resting on his holster. He pushed Marla back, hard. "Ma'am, if you touch her again, I will add assault on a witness to the charge sheet. Stand down." Marla hit the wall, panting, her eyes wild. I walked past her. I didn't look at her. I looked straight ahead, out the open door, into the swirling gray wind. I stepped onto the porch. The noise was absolute. The helicopter had lowered to just a few feet above the street level, its skids hovering over the double yellow line. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but it felt amazing. It felt like the air was scrubbing the scent of lemon polish and fear off my skin. I walked down the steps. The neighbors were lining the street now. I saw the faces of people who had ignored me for years. Mrs. Gable, the mailman, the high school kids. They were whispering, pointing. "That's Eliana," they were saying. "The quiet one. The one Marla said was crazy." They weren't looking at a crazy person now. They were looking at a woman walking toward a private helicopter while the FBI raided her childhood home. I reached the street. The side door of the helicopter slid open on smooth tracks. Marco was there, extending a hand, but my eyes went past him, into the dark, leather-lined interior of the cabin. Sitting in a cream-colored captain's chair was a woman who looked like a queen in exile. She was tiny, wrapped in a tailored wool coat that probably cost more than my father's car. A clear plastic tube ran under her nose, connected to a portable oxygen concentrator at her feet. Eleanor Kingsley. She looked frail, her skin like parchment paper, but her eyes were alive. They were dark, sharp, and currently fixed on me with an intensity that burned. Marco grabbed my arm, steadying me against the downdraft. "Watch your step," he yelled. I climbed up onto the skid and pulled myself into the cabin. The smell inside was rich: leather, aviation fuel, and expensive perfume. Marco slid the door shut with a heavy thunk. The roar of the world outside was instantly muffled, replaced by the high-pitched whine of the turbine and the hum of the noise-canceling headsets hanging on the wall. I sat down in the seat facing Eleanor. My hands were shaking. I clasped them in my lap to hide it. Marco buckled me in, checking the 4-point harness. "Secure," he said into his headset. "Lift off." I looked out the window. Marla had run out onto the lawn. She was screaming at the sky, her arms flailing, her floral dress whipping around her legs. She looked small. She looked pathetic. She was holding her phone up, as if recording us would somehow stop the federal government from seizing her assets. Behind her, the agents were carrying out boxes. My father was sitting on the porch steps, his head in his hands, a statue of defeat. The helicopter lurched gently, then surged upward. The ground fell away, the house shrank, the cul-de-sac became a circle, the town became a grid. I felt a hand on my knee. I turned. Eleanor was leaning forward, her breathing labored but steady. She reached into the inside pocket of her coat and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She pressed it into my hands. I looked down. The label on the front was typed in crisp, black letters: "Confidential, Kingsley Community Holdings, Succession Plan." I looked up at her. She tapped the button on her headset so she could speak to me through the intercom. Her voice filled my ears, clear and intimate, cutting through the mechanical noise. "Open it later," she said, "but know what it is." I ran my thumb over the seal. "For 20 years, Eleanor said, her voice hard. "They taught you that you were a burden. They taught you that you were nobody. They made you small so they could feel big." She gestured out the window, toward the shrinking world below us. "I came here today to remind you of the truth, Eliana." She squeezed my knee, her grip surprisingly strong. "In that house, you were a victim, but up here, in the real world?" She nodded at the envelope in my lap. "You are the one holding the pen. You are the one with the power. And you are the one who gets to decide how the story ends." I looked at the envelope. Then I looked out the window at the horizon, where the gray clouds were breaking apart to reveal a sliver of blue ocean. I took a deep breath. It was the first full breath I had taken in 14 years. "Thank you," I whispered into the microphone. "Don't thank me," Eleanor said, sitting back and adjusting her oxygen tube. "Just get ready to work. We have a lot of houses to build." The helicopter banked left, turning away from Port Harbor, turning away from the past, and accelerating toward the city. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The rearview mirror was for people who were being chased. I wasn't being chased anymore. I was flying. The helicopter did not just land. It arrived. We touched down on a private helipad atop a structure that looked less like a house and more like a fortress of glass and steel. Perched on the cliffs overlooking the bay, the contrast was so sharp it made my head spin. An hour ago, I had been standing on a rotting wooden porch in Port Harbor, smelling mildew and defeat. Now, I was stepping onto polished concrete, the wind smelling of salt and expensive landscaping. Marco opened the door and helped Eleanor down. She moved slowly, her oxygen tank humming rhythmically, but her posture was upright. She looked like a general returning to her command post. "Welcome home, Eliana," she said, her voice thin against the wind. Inside, the house was a sanctuary of silence. The thick glass walls cut out the sound of the ocean and the helicopter, leaving a quiet so profound it felt heavy. We did not go to a living room. We went straight to a conference room that commanded a view of the water. Dana Holt was already there, along with Jared Sloan and 2 other junior lawyers I had not met. They stood up when we entered. On the wall, a massive screen was paused on a freeze frame of a video. It was Marla, her face twisted in a scream, her finger pointing at the camera. It was the footage I had taken at the restaurant. "We have everything we need," Dana said without preamble. She slid a thick binder across the mahogany table toward me. "The forensic audit is complete. The affidavits are drafted. The restraining orders are ready for signature. I sat down. The leather chair was cool against my back. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her hands clasped in front of her. She did not speak. She just watched me. "You have 3 paths," Dana explained, her tone clinical. "Option 1, we pursue full criminal prosecution, given the amount of money involved, which exceeds $400,000, and the interstate nature of the wire fraud. We are looking at federal charges. Prison time is a certainty, 10 years minimum." I stared at the binder. Prison. "Option 2, Dana continued. "We file a civil suit for restitution. We strip them of every asset they own, the house, the cars, the savings. We leave them destitute, but free." "Option 3? I asked. "The nuclear option," Jared said. "Both. We cooperate with the FBI for the prison sentences, and we sue them civilly to ensure they have nothing to come back to when they get out." I looked at the screen. I looked at Marla's face. I felt a surge of satisfaction that terrified me. I wanted her to hurt. I wanted her to lose everything. But then I thought of my father. Carl Graham, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, the man who used to sneak me extra ice cream when Mom wasn't looking, the man who had become a ghost in his own life, hollowed out by a woman who consumed souls for breakfast. "My father," I said, my voice quiet. "If we do option 1, he goes to prison too." "He signed the tax returns, Eliana," Dana said gently. "He knowingly benefited from the fraud. He watched the abuse happen and did nothing." "He is weak," I said. "He is not evil. He is just weak." "The law does not distinguish between malice and cowardice when the check is fraudulent," Dana replied. "But I need you to understand something. You are not the one putting him in prison. The United States Attorney is the one who decides to prosecute. The crime has already been committed. You are just the witness." I looked at Eleanor. She hadn't said a word. She was letting me navigate this moral minefield on my own. "I cannot save him from the federal government," I said slowly. "If they broke the law, they broke the law. I will not lie to protect them." "Good," Dana said. "But," I continued, sitting up straighter, "I want the civil agreement to be specific. I want a global settlement." I opened the binder and pulled out a notepad. "I want a permanent, irrevocable restraining order. If they contact me, if they mention my name on social media, if they come within 500 feet of me, they go back to jail, complete severance." "Done," Jared said, writing it down. "And the money," I said. "The restitution." "We will get it back," Dana promised. "We will liquidate the house. We will garnish their wages." "I don't want it," I said. The room went silent. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "I don't want their money," I clarified. "If I take it, Marla will spend the rest of her life telling people I destroyed the family for a payday. She will make herself the martyr. She will say I was greedy." I looked at the view of the bay. "I want every cent recovered to go into a specific fund," I said. "The Kingsley Community Holdings Fund for veteran housing. I want it to build homes for soldiers who actually served. I want Marla Graham's stolen money to pay for the very thing she mocked me for." A slow smile spread across Eleanor's face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated pride. "Brilliant," Eleanor whispered. "You take away her narrative. You turn the theft into charity." "And I want to run it," I said, looking at my grandmother. "You said there was a position. I want to be the one who signs the checks for those veterans. I want my name on the bottom line." "Dana," Eleanor said, snapping her fingers. "The papers." Dana reached into her briefcase and pulled out a document on heavy, cream-colored paper. "I anticipated this," Eleanor said. "This is an amendment to the Kingsley Living Trust. It appoints Eliana Graham as the co-trustee and immediate successor for the philanthropic division. It gives you operational control effective immediately. You are not just an heir, Eliana. You are the boss." She slid the paper toward me. She handed me a heavy gold fountain pen. I signed my name, not the shaky, scared signature Marla had forged for years. I signed it with a bold, sharp flourish. Eliana Graham. Now, Eleanor said, her eyes hardening. Let us tell them. Dana set up a laptop at the end of the table. We have arranged a secure video conference with their legal representation, a court-appointed lawyer who sounds very tired, and the defendants. They are currently at the county sheriff's station. The screen flickered to life. The lighting was harsh and fluorescent. Sitting at a metal table were Marla and Carl. They looked small. Marla's hair was messy, her makeup smeared. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with her skin tone. Carl was in gray, looking at his hands. When Marla saw me on the screen, sitting in the leather chair with the ocean behind me, her eyes narrowed. Eliana, she spat. You happy now? You proud of yourself? Ms. Graham, Dana interrupted, her voice cutting like a knife. You will address my client as Ms. Kingsley Graham, or you will be muted. This is a courtesy call to outline the terms of the civil settlement we are offering in parallel with the criminal charges. Settlement? Marla laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. She stole our lives. She called the feds on her own parents. I am not your daughter, Marla, I said. My voice was calm. It didn't shake. And I didn't steal anything. I just turned on the lights. We raised you, Marla screamed. We fed you. And this is how you repay us? By sending us to prison? By leaving us with nothing? You left yourselves with nothing when you spent $400,000 that didn't belong to you, I said. Carl looked up. His eyes were red. Ellie, he croaked. Please, just tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I didn't know. I looked at my father. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, like looking at an old photograph of a stranger. I can't do that, Dad, I said. Because you did know. You knew every time you drank a beer bought with my money. You knew every time you watched her hit me and looked away because it was easier than fighting her. I was protecting you, he whispered weakly. No, I said. You were protecting yourself. We are offering a deal, Dana interjected. You sign a permanent non-contact agreement. You agree to the liquidation of assets for restitution. In exchange, Eliana will not press for the maximum punitive damages in civil court. She is letting you keep your clothes and personal effects. That is more mercy than you deserve. I won't sign it, Marla yelled. I won't let her win. She chose money. She chose money over her own family. I leaned forward. I filled the camera frame. I didn't choose money, Marla, I said. I gave it all away. Every dime you pay back is going to build houses for homeless veterans. I won't see a penny of it. Marla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I had taken her weapon. I had taken her story. I didn't choose money over family, I repeated, my voice steel. I chose the truth over your version of it, and I chose myself. I looked at the lawyer on the other end of the call. Send the papers, I said. If they don't sign, we take everything. Eliana, wait, Carl shouted. I reached out and pressed the red button. The screen went black. The room was silent. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. Well done, Eleanor said softly. We finished the paperwork in silence. It was the boring, beautiful work of bureaucracy. Signatures, notary stamps, initials. Each page was a brick in the wall I was building between my past and my future. When it was done, the sun had set. The bay was a dark void dotted with the lights of ships. Come, Eleanor said. Let us get some air. We walked out onto the balcony. The wind was cold, brisk and clean. We stood by the railing, looking down at the city lights shimmering below us. I failed you, Eleanor said. She didn't look at me. She looked at the horizon. I let my pride keep me away. I was so angry at your mother for leaving, so angry at Carl for being... Carl, I thought if I stayed away, I was respecting Laura's wishes. I should have kicked down the door years ago. You are here now, I said. I am old. Eliana, she said. I have money, and I have power, but I don't have time. I'm not going to try to be your mother. You don't need a mother. You are a grown woman who survived a war zone in her own living room. She turned to me. I am going to be your partner. I will teach you how to wield this power. I will teach you how to make sure nobody ever hurts you again, but I will not own you. You are free." "That is all I ever wanted," I said. "Good," she said. She patted my hand. "Now, I believe Marco has something for you. I told him you left something behind." She gestured back toward the glass doors. Marco was standing there, holding a small velvet bag. I walked over to him. "Ms. Graham," he said, his face stoic but his eyes kind. "I stopped by a boutique on the way to the hangar. Eleanor mentioned the incident with the bottle." He handed me the bag. I opened it. Inside was a heavy crystal bottle. It wasn't the cheap drugstore scent I had bought. It was Nuit de la Liberté, Night of Freedom. "Thank you, Marco," I said. "The helicopter is refueled," he said. "We can take you to the hotel whenever you are ready, or anywhere else you want to go." "In a minute," I said. I walked back to the edge of the balcony. I was alone. Eleanor had stepped inside to give me this moment. I looked down at the bottle. It was heavy, substantial. I thought about the bathroom in Port Harbor. I thought about the smell of bleach and blood. I thought about the $15 that had started a revolution. I popped the cap. I didn't dab it cautiously. I didn't hide it. I raised the bottle and sprayed it into the night air. 1, 2, 3 times. A cloud of jasmine, amber, and steel surrounded me. It smelled expensive. It smelled like power. It smelled like victory. I closed my eyes and inhaled. There was no shouting. No door was going to slam open. No hand was going to strike my face. The only sound was the rising whine of the turbine engine on the helipad above me. The blades beginning to turn, warming up to take me wherever I decided to go. I wasn't Eliana the victim. I wasn't Eliana the burden. I was Eliana Kingsley Graham. And for the first time in my life, the pilot seat was mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from and what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Don't forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit the like button and press that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. Until next time, stay strong.